Welcome to Everything You Need to Know About the Ascension of Humanity, the podcast where ancient wisdom meets modern science and spiritual evolution gets real. I'm Heather, an energy healer, channel, and spiritual coach with Divine Ascension Company. Each week, we're diving deep into the mysteries of human consciousness, spiritual awakening, and the profound transformation happening within us and around us. But here's the thing. We're not doing this with our heads in the clouds. We're bringing neuroscience, psychology, quantum physics, and cutting-edge research to the table alongside meditation, energy work, and timeless spiritual teachings. Because the truth is, the ascension of humanity isn't some far-off cosmic event. It's happening right now in the choices we make, the awareness we cultivate, and the healing we do within ourselves. Whether you're curious about how mindfulness literally rewires your brain, why shadow work is backed by depth psychology, or what coherence between your heart and mind actually means scientifically, you're in the right place. We'll explore practices like breathwork, meditation, and emotional alchemy, not as abstract concepts, but as tangible tools grounded in both spiritual wisdom and scientific understanding. And here's where it gets even better. In our bonus episodes, you'll hear from real people sharing real stories. These are the warriors, the healers, the everyday seekers who've walked through their own darkness and found their light. They'll share their breakthroughs, their struggles, and the resources that actually helped them along the way. Because personal growth isn't a solo journey, and you deserve to know you're not alone. So whether you're just beginning to question the nature of reality, or you're deep in your spiritual practice, this podcast is your companion on the path. It's time to expand, to awaken, and to rise together. Let's begin. Today's guest built one of only 14 12-step programs recognized worldwide alongside AA, NA, and GA, and he built it out of his own survival, not theory. Richard Tierney is a Christian trauma recovery coach based in Thailand and the creator of Trauma Recovery Anonymous. His story includes a childhood trauma at 12 that took him decades to speak about, addiction, self-harm, and 4 suicide attempts, the last of which happened far from shore in the ocean in Bali, where a stranger appeared out of nowhere and brought him back in. That moment changed something in him. What follows is a recovery built on a simple but very specific idea, that much of what gets labeled a mental disorder is actually what he calls a hole in the soul, and that healing it requires giving the pain back to the version of yourself who actually carried it, not the person you are today. We talk about the difference between being a victim and being a survivor, why traditional talk therapy kept him stuck in a loop for years, and the 2-hour process he now calls the healing event, where clients meet their younger selves and release what they've been carrying for good. This one is a little heavy in places and deeply hopeful by the end. Let's get into it. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode. Today we have a very special guest. His name is Richard, and he's a Christian trauma recovery coach. And if you know anything about me, you know I deal with a lot of people who go through religious trauma and indoctrination and deconstruction. And so I'm really excited to have this conversation today and to hear the story. How are you doing today, Richard?
Heather, thank you for having me. I'm in fine form. I've been so excited for this podcast. I've turned up 3 times early to be here. So, yeah.
Time zones are the bane of my existence sometimes, so I totally get it. I totally understand.
So to your audience, good morning. Very nice to meet you all. I'm really delighted to be here and had this show. A couple of things. I declare I'm a Christian just because I am, but that isn't kind of the backbone or there's no kind of you have to be a Christian to do this. It's not a case of Christians standing together. It's just a case of my program has developed over time, and I believe that we're allowed to claim the miracles of the Bible. We don't have to be a priest or a pastor. We don't have to be church going. We don't have to be church attending. We can choose never to be a member of any denomination, any church, and yet still claim our miracles. And for many of us seeking peace of mind, or a sense of wholeness, the last opportunity we have really is miracles. We've all tried mental health and medication and therapy, and we're still crazy. And I do believe at that stage we have to heal what I call the hole in our soul. I believe that most of us are not mentally ill. We don't have a mental disorder. We have a soul sickness. We have an energy that's eating away at us, causing this hole in our soul. And that's what manifests with our faulty thinking and our faulty feelings.
Absolutely. I agree. And I talk about this often, especially with my psychology background, that I don't think mental disorders are what, we've been believed to think they are. Like, take schizophrenia, for example. I think that's someone who can see and hear the other side of the veil, who has a channeling ability that is uncontrolled, unmanaged, and they are confused and have no idea what's going on. And we've been programmed and taught to think that that's evil or wrong or bad. So they, fill us with medication to make us compliant and obedient, or they, lock us up and throw away the key, one of the two. But I think that a lot of the mental disorders and diagnoses that are out there are truly of a spiritual nature, and we just don't look at it that way. Anyway,
I love you saying that. Again, I get very worried of this because I don't want to get into conspiracy. Like I'm a conspiracist against the mental health industry. I just like that concept, even though it's probably valid. Everything you've said for me resonates with me completely. But I don't want to be seen as this crackpot conspiracist against the mental health. So what I like to do is I like to kind of separate mental illness from mental disorder. That's a big thing. I think we have to separate the two. I think if you're diagnosed with mental illness, that can't be a misdiagnosis. That's like set up. Like if you had a sore tooth and went to the dentist, he said you've a wisdom tooth. You couldn't argue it. Like it's a set condition. But I saw a podcast where a psychologist said that when we interview people with mental disorders, we normally do kind of taking them in about 15 minutes, and then we make a decision on what they have, and we diagnose them with that condition. So diagnosis can be done very, very quickly and very abruptly on a person's presentation of what they're feeling, rather than on the actual, like, a mental illness, a mental disorder. And then I read recently in a study that the mental health industry conducted that 39% of all people diagnosed were misdiagnosed.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can misdiagnose mental illness, but if you can misdiagnose a mental disorder, then there has to be a difference between the two.
Yeah, that makes sense. But I also think that it takes, because if you look at the DSM-5 and the criteria that they use to make those diagnoses, and given such a short window of time where they, observe your behavior, ask the questions, and do the evaluation, I think that there's something wrong with the format. So that causes the misdiagnoses so much, because I think you need more time than 15 minutes to be able to truly understand what's going on with someone and be able to determine whether they're even telling you the truth, because that can be an issue as well when it comes to these things. So it depends on how honest they're being, if they're actually describing it in the proper way, because sometimes we don't have the language for what is actually truly going on. And you have to kind of be able to read body language and read between the lines a bit, or ask the right questions. And I don't think many health officials do that. And I'm speaking in generalities here. I'm not against Western medicine whatsoever. I have a psychology background. I think there's a time and a place. I just think that there's some revisions of the system that need to be, taken into consideration. So the DSM-5 is so black and white, and it's like, okay, have you been experiencing this symptom for X amount of time? Well, maybe that X amount of time is off because it's an acute response to something, or a trigger to something, or there's an underlying factor, or there's multiple symptoms that are going on. Because if you look at a lot of those diagnoses, they share similar symptoms. So it's really hard to differentiate the two with such a short period of time, with the potential of them not being honest or not having the right language. So you really have to be able to use your discernment. And I think that there's an issue with how that is presented. But again, we're not, I don't know if that's what we're here to talk about today. So
totally. Yeah. Again, I wouldn't dream of finding fault with any mental health professional.
Yeah.
I think anyone who gives their life to serving man, whether they're an army or police or emergencies or a mental health professional, they've committed their lives to serving others, and they're not the problem. I think that the modality that they've been given to use may be an issue. But again, I'm not attacking. My sister is a family therapist, and she works her arse off trying to help families. And I wouldn't for 1 minute say you're the fault. Okay, so let's get. I need to get back on track here. I'm going down a dark hole. So I experienced a trauma when I was 12 years of age, and it destroyed me. And it wasn't that I wanted to die; I didn't want to live. I felt of shame and self-loathing or what had happened to me, and I allowed it to happen. I'm only a child, but I'm thinking like a man. I should have defended myself, and I couldn't. I was only a child, 12-year-old child. And that filled me with such shame and self-loathing. So over the years, I withdrew into myself, became very, very much angry at the world, and wouldn't leave anyone get close. So my family couldn't help me because I was putting on this brave face and pushing them away and pretending I'm okay when I was destroyed inside.
Yeah.
It led me to addiction, self-harm, dysfunctional behaviors, isolation, abandonment. And I was doing all this to myself and then blaming the whole world that didn't care. You know, you push everyone away and then say, why doesn't want anyone come near me? And they're all wary coming near me because I keep pushing them away, you know, so they'd stay away and I'd feel abandoned. And then this led me to geographical change. I moved from Ireland to Thailand. I went to the other side of the world to get away from myself. I took myself with me, and it was soul destroying. I attempted suicide 4 times in my life. The first time and the last time were the worst. But the last time changed me into realizing I didn't want to die. I wanted to live, you know. So there was a lot of stuff going on in this child's brain. And of course, because it happened as a child, I grew up into what they call an adult child. I grew up into an adult with a child's mind, a child's reaction to life. And that's really the biggest problem I ever had growing up was I was great around children. So I'd be 27, 28 over at families' parties, and I'm playing with kids, and the life and soul of kids. I can't interact with adults. I'm super with children. And people say, God, isn't he great to be great, make a great father? And I didn't know that this was my safe place, was playing with children rather than mixing with adults.
Yeah. Wow. So what made you recognize the fact that this was a trauma response for you?
But at one stage, I developed depression. And I was looking for something outside of myself to blame what's going on inside. So I did addiction, I did gambling and alcohol, and I did self-harm, and I went for therapy, and I did depression. Always looking to blame something outside of myself, what was going on inside of myself. I never understood my problem was inside. I was always looking to blame something in my past, my parents, neglect, abandonment, not being understood, anything outside of myself. And therapy was wonderful. And again, I'm not attacking therapists, but I got to go someplace for an hour. I could bitch and moan about my family, my feelings be validated, but then I'd have to leave there and come back into real life where my family weren't validating my feelings, weren't allowing me to bitch and moan like for that hour. And then I go back and I have a hell week because I have to get validated my feelings in a therapy session. I used to think I want my therapist to be my mother or my father because they're fantastic. They listen to me, you know. I want it to be my family, you know. This crazy thinking. So it's like I got into this terrible rut of pushing away those people I needed to let get close. So that was really the start of my downfall. I never understood that my family are my family. My therapist, I pay to be my therapist, and I can't pay my therapist to be my therapist. She'll drop me and move on. Right. It's about I'm her income, I'm her salary. And it doesn't mean she doesn't care, but I'm her bread and butter. She has to pay her bills like anybody else. She has to pay for her rent and lighting and for school fees, whatever. And she needs to make a living. And I'm part of her living process. She's not my mother, not my father. She's not someone who cares about me on that level. She cares about me as a professional, but I'm paying for her services. And if I can't pay for services, she needs to fill that void with somebody else. And that was a shock to my system. I suddenly realized this person isn't suitable to be my new mommy or daddy because I'm paying for their time. And that helped me to realize there's something wrong in my thinking. Looking for the solution outside of myself is not really the best, most valid idea.
Yeah. Wow. So what happened after that?
Well, again, my fourth attempt of suicide was in Bali. I tried to drown myself, and I came very close to it. I was told where not to go out in a surfboard. I'd never surfed before in my life, and I grabbed a surfboard, and he said, "Don't go that way. That's the riptides, and you go that way, you'll never come back." So, of course, I hop in the water and I go for that riptide, and I end up being about 500 meters out from shore on this rift. And I'm 6'6", and I'm a big man, on the surfboard that's too small for me. And I'm out in this thing and I can't get back in. And I realized this is it. In that moment, I wanted to live for the first time in my life. And out of the blue, I don't know how it happened, but God sent this long-haired hippie covered in tattoos suddenly appears on his board beside me saying to me, "Are you in difficulty?" And I'm crying my eyes out like a child. I'm in my 40s. I'm sneezed down my face, crying my eyes out. And he basically grabbed the side of my board and he pulled me in. He got me in from into the shore. It took about an hour and a half. When I made it to the shore, he basically helped me to get all the seawater out of my mouth. He said, "You need to get back in the water or you'll be afraid." And I just left. I didn't thank him. I just get up and left at the beach, went to my hotel, got my bags, went to the airport and flew to Thailand and left Bali for Thailand and started over. I needed to get away from that thinking. I just left. I went to Thailand and I found solace in Thailand. I found AA as a recovering alcoholic, not attending meetings didn't really help my sanity, So I ended up going back to meetings, and I really realized how screwed I was, how I'd become so isolated and withdrawn. And I couldn't blame anybody. It was a decision I made to push everybody away and be alone so I could, end it all. And here I was suddenly 7,000 miles away from home, realizing I hadn't been to a meeting in 7 months. I was absolutely lunatic, insane, crazy, all that kind of stuff. But because I'm on my own, in my own little headspace, I'm thinking I'm perfectly fine. But in reality, I now see why people are staying away from me. There's madness in my eyes, and this kind of stuff, the crazed look, and that kind of insane thinking. And I'm in that space thinking that's normal and that's okay.
Yeah. So when you were out on that surfboard, and, what was going through your mind, and what did something, whether it was a thought or a realization, what happened that made you realize that you actually wanted to live?
I've been thinking about this for many years, and I've always wanted, I wish that there was something I could say that would help all the other people who get close. It just happened that in that moment, I wanted to live. It was that boringly simple. I've been thinking about it and I've been ruminating about it and planning it for years. And I attempted 3 times previously. And in that final moment, suddenly I don't know if it was being cowardly or afraid or all those kind of thoughts about what happens if I don't die and I'm a vegetable. I have no idea. All I knew that in that final moment, I wanted to live. I don't know where that came from because I'm a bit of a coward and I've been a victim all my life. And to suddenly want to fight for life was so alien to the person that I was. It was like such an extreme change from a person who'd given up on life and believed that I was broken and I was hopeless and no one could ever like me or love me or want me in their lives. And I was never going to have a life, to suddenly wanting to live. I can't describe the event any more than there was suddenly a sudden desire in me to live.
So was that the catalyst for making change in your life?
Huge. I came off that and I realized if I'm going to live, then I have to fully live. I can't continue being a victim, blaming the world. I have to find out how to heal myself. And I knew others couldn't do it. My therapists were the most loving, caring people, but I was a job to them. They would sit and they would validate my feelings. And I realized that if I bitched and moaned about them, they'd drop me. They'd move me on somebody else. So they validated my feelings, so I continued going to them. And there was nothing bad or sinister. That was just the way it was. You want to sell shoes to somebody, you keep being polite to this person, even though you might hate the customer. You keep being polite to them to get his money to buy your shoes off you. But if he gives you grief, you'll say, "Listen, go to some other shoe shop. I'm not taking this stuff." So there was things I learned from myself. And again, nothing against any therapist of any kind, but things I learned from myself that this was an inside job. And then I started kind of researching as much as possible I could. I'm not scientific. I'm not a very intelligent person. But I learned that science says it's about cause and effect. The effect is how it manifests in our lives, and the cause is what happened in the past. And I knew that question, how does that make you feel, would always trigger a negative response in me. I needed to start asking myself the question, what happened in the past to my inner child that caused me to feel this way? I had to understand it happened to a younger aspect of me. It didn't happen to me. So today I'm a 65-year-old man on your podcast having this conversation. I'm not a 12-year-old child from 50 years ago who suffered a trauma. So I can't say what happened to that 12-year-old child happened to me because I'm a 65-year-old man. I can only be a 65-year-old man today. My whole existence is in this moment in time.
Mm-hmm.
So I realized I carry the memory of what happened to a 12-year-old child, and I carry sympathy pains for his loss of innocence. But that's what we call him an inner child. And that's what we call him his loss of innocence. It happened to him. It didn't happen to me. I had to stop searching for my meaning and purpose in a past event that wasn't mine to suffer. My life is today. On your podcast at 7 a.m. in the morning over here. The start of my day is on your podcast. I'm not a child 50 years ago. I'm in your company on a podcast talking about recovery. And this is my whole life today. And nothing to do with, I can't change yesterday or last week or last month or 50 years ago. So I had to come to understand that my whole life can only be in this moment. And if I'm going to have a life in this moment, I have to separate myself from today, from all of my past experiences, good and bad. I can't keep going on about winning a trophy 20 years ago and talk about that for the rest of my life, or a trauma that happened 50 years ago and say that's who I am.
Right.
I'm living a lie. I need to focus on just these 24 hours in front of me today.
Yeah, that's a good perspective and certainly helpful for the healing journey. Absolutely. So what got you into doing trauma recovery? I mean, obviously your story, but what made you decide that that was the route that you wanted to go?
Well, I love this talk about, when we talk about the 12-year-old child in my life 50 years ago was the victim. Today, I am the survivor.
Mm-hmm.
I'm no longer in that trauma event. I'm looking back down a tunnel of what happened in the past. So that child is the victim and I'm the victor, or I'm the survivor. I came through it. I'm looking back at what happened, something in my past. So there's a separation there between victim and survivor. And if I'm the survivor, I can't be the victim. I can't be in two places at once. I can't be in two different lifetimes at once. Either I'm a 65-year-old man married with children and a trauma therapist today, or I'm a 12-year-old child living with my parents and family at home in Ireland. I can't be in two places at once. This really helped me an awful lot to understand. But then also, I spoke to on a podcast recently, and someone said, many of us go from being survivor to either being a victor, breaking free for completely, or being a helper.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew my path was to be a helper, to help others who came on my path, like a phoenix rising from the ashes, that they're on the ashes behind me, and I'm getting to show them how to come out.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I chose to be I chose to be a helper. And I believe you yourself, Heather, would be a chosen helper too. Now, we may not realize it at the time or put a label on us, but we made a decision that we're going to, from where we came from, or I speak for myself, where I came from, I was going to help others.
Absolutely. Break the cycle, not repeat it, and help others because that's the whole point. You stay one step ahead so you can help others and show them the way through it, and that it is possible to get through it and that they're not alone. And that's, extremely important, especially for someone who's still in that victim mindset or who has just recently experienced the trauma, because it is isolating and you do feel like, man, how can I even talk to somebody about this? Because you have that guilt and that shame and all the things that you just described. And so having people who have gone through it be there to help you through is such a wonderful thing. Absolutely.
Totally, Heather. And the whole thing is, once we've experienced any event, good or bad, we change. It's not that anyone else around us changes, but we change. If we suffer a bad trauma, we experience what I call a loss of innocence. And one time we were whole, and then a piece of us was broken off, and that piece been taken from us has caused a loss of innocence. So again, if you're a veteran and you're talking about PTSD, well, you're a survivor today, and a young 18-year-old version of you went off to fight in the war, and that young 18-year-old suffered the horrors of war, and he suffered the loss of innocence. And you're at the other side, no longer wearing a uniform, living your life today. You're not the same person. That's the 18-year-old version of you who suffered the loss of innocence. That changed them. And you can see that change in them, that when they went off to war, they were probably healthy and whole. They came back and they were broken and they didn't fit in with their families or friends. And you can clearly see that they had a horrible time at that time. But you're looking back at what happened to them. You can't declare it happened to me. And that's what we're trying to teach them in Trauma Recovery Anonymous. Our whole meaning and existence to life is just these 24 hours. It's no more than these 24 hours. We can't step back into yesterday or last week. And there's no guarantee we're going to wake up in the unknown future of tomorrow. So if we only have these 24 hours a day, we have to focus on these 24 hours a day. So an exercise I do with my clients is to grab 2 sheets of paper. And on the first sheet, write your name and your age of who you are today. So in my case, it's 65-year-old Richard. And I write a biography of who I am today. Not of the past, the future, but just of today. So my wife, my adult children, my mother-in-law, we live in Thailand, we have a small dog, I have a car, a motorbike, I have a bicycle. I play golf, I play chess, swimming, walking, cycling. I love reading. I have a Bible. I never had a Bible before. I read my Bible. I don't go to church. I don't remember any denomination, but I find great solace in reading the Bible. I just do. It really helps me an awful lot. And then, my family of origin, my parents died, my grandparents died, all my aunts and uncles bar one died. My family home was sold. One of my siblings died of leukemia, and so on. My childhood school friends, 5 of them died before the age of 50.
Wow.
And I have 2 close friends left in Ireland. And I made this whole biography of who I am today. And then, like the second sheet, I put down the name and age of the version of myself who suffered the trauma, which is a 12-year-old child. And since I see myself as Richard today, I see him as Richie. So it's 12-year-old Richie lives in the family home with his parents. His grandparents are in his life. His aunts and uncles are in his life. All his siblings are alive in his life. All his friends in school are alive. He's attending a local school in the area, and so on. And when I put down these 2 sheets, I can see we're talking about 2 completely different people.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the breakthrough for me. When I realized that it wasn't about how the past make me feel, because it's none of my business. It's what happened in the past to my inner child that caused me to feel this way.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a shift. Suddenly it was about him. I was no longer the subject of the trauma. The subject was a 12-year-old child in my past. And that for me was what broke the back of being a victim of the past.
Mm-hmm.
The past didn't happen to the 65-year-old man. It's a memory I carry. And like all memories, I can have good memories, I can have bad memories. And whichever memory I choose to focus on means I'm neglecting the present. And where we hear again, the past is history, tomorrow is a mystery, all we have is today, a gift from God. And those kind of phrases got me thinking, well, maybe God could play a part in my recovery, because my best efforts on my own, mental therapy, mental health therapy, medications, therapy, aren't helping. I'm going clinically insane.
Right.
Living in this space of talking about the past like it's my whole life and suffering the effects of it, and then medicating myself to dampen the moods. Nothing's improving. It's like the depression. I tell you, Heather, this is now, must be 30 years ago. I'm on my way to work in the family business, and I'm walking down the main street, and I'm on my medication. So I'm just going through the motions. Medication has dampened my mood, to say the least.
Right.
And I'm walking down the street. In those days, there were very few immigrants or refugees around Europe, and we had this influx of Romanian gypsy refugees into Ireland. Again, there weren't many. Now there's hundreds of thousands, but back then, it was 4 or 5 kind of stuff coming in. There's a woman on the side of the road holding a baby, and the pedestrian traffic is a bit congested, and I'm standing beside her, and she's pulling at my leg of my trousers looking for money for holding the baby. And I didn't care. Didn't affect me in the slightest. I pulled my leg from her and I walked on. And I got to work. I did my day's work. And towards the end of the day, as the medication wore off, I felt sick in my stomach that I hadn't got a bone of empathy in my body for this woman holding the baby, that I shoved her off like she was nothing. And finding that even when the medication wore off, I felt physically sick.
Wow.
I did this toilet and I tried to put fingers down my throat to make myself sick, to get this sense of disgust out of my system. So the next day I went to my doctor and said, I can't do this medication anymore. I want to come off this medication. And he said, no. So I went home and I phoned my brother and I said, listen, I won't be in work for a few weeks. And I went into my bedroom and I went cold turkey.
Wow.
For 3 weeks. And I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. It was the most horrific thing I ever did in my life. Wouldn't recommend it to anybody. But it took 3 weeks of vomiting and cold sweats and diarrhea and crying my eyes out and going crazy and banging my head against the wall for 3 whole weeks to come off the meds. And I wasn't healthy after those 2 weeks. I was loop the loop. Like, I was just no meds now to all the suppressed feelings were coming back.
Wow.
But for the first time in my life, I felt alive.
Yeah.
I can describe that to you more than on the surfboard.
Mm-hmm.
I felt alive, and it was horrible. All these feelings were just bombarding me from every angle. But for the first time in 5 years, I felt alive in some insane kind of way, And I remember went back to my doctor. I said, I came off the meds, and he goes, "Are you crazy?" I didn't mean not come off them. I meant come off them gradually. I would have paced you off it over a while. What did you do? You're crazy, whatever. Are you okay? I said, yeah, I'll be okay. I don't want any meds ever again. I'll be okay. I'm not going to drink or drug. And I didn't mean don't, kind of stuff, the backpedaling. He was trying to tell me, he meant you can do it, slowly. You can, again. So I wouldn't wish it on anybody, but that was, again, my spiritual awakening moment that I had to heal the hole in my soul. I knew there's something eating away at me that was causing me all these feelings that were manifesting in my life. And it wasn't the feelings that were the problem. It wasn't my thinking. It was something was eating away at me. And that was the focus point to start Trauma Recovery Anonymous.
Awesome. So tell us more about the program that you have.
Okay. Well, I've been a member of AA, attending AA. I think AA is the greatest gift given to mankind in the 20th century. There was a time when people who were alcoholic, it was either jails, institutions, or deaths. There was no hope for recovery at all. But once someone became alcoholic, you basically threw away the key. You forgot about them because there was no hope for them. And then two men in the 30s devised this program of if you help one another and you work together, you could stay off a drink one day at a time and things could change. And then they created a 6-step program based on the Bible and Christian teachings about cleaning your side of the street, making amends, not being a victim, that kind of stuff. There's a simple 6-step program. The Oxford group was the famous group at the time who took this on and were great. And then they expanded it to 12 steps, and they decided rather than being one religion or one denomination, they decided all denominations were equal. So the underlying fact is we can all be members with God as we understand him. So if I'm a Catholic and you're a Protestant, we're equal. It's not that Catholics are better than Protestants or Protestants are better than Catholics. So you could be any denomination, or you could be an atheist or an agnostic. But the focus was the Christian God was the idea behind the God of the AA program. But you could be an atheist, you could be an agnostic, and you could be any denomination, and it was still okay to be a member. And if you did this work, you'd heal. Now, if you didn't embrace the God part of it, you may stay sober for years, but you might drink again. And that was the honest to God truth. That's what the experience was. People could be sober for years, attend AA, and basically stay away from their families, and then suddenly they drink again. They couldn't understand why. But if you could give the concept of God into your life, and again, the thing was, you didn't have to join any of these religions. That was the big part of it. You could have God like I do in my life, but I don't go to church. I'm not a member of a denomination. But you talk to God morning, noon, and night. I talk to God all day long. I'm driving the car, I'm walking the dog. I'll just talk to him in my head. I'll say, okay, Lord, take this crap off me before I meet Heather. Please make me speak slowly and clearly and help me be able to carry a message of hope to her audience. And then I come out and I have a chat with you. And I think I'm actually doing that. I think God has taken all the madness from my head today so I can speak slowly and clearly and carry some message of hope to your audience.
Awesome. That's amazing. So how does, I'm assuming that your trauma recovery program is very similar to that then?
The second part is, having a plan for living, a design for living, where basically you ask yourself 12 questions, morning, noon, and night. Throughout your day, you ask yourself 12 yes and no questions. And that becomes your plan for living, which is the AA program. The first step of 12-step of Trauma Recovery Anonymous is, was I a victim today? Yes or no? For any reason, did I act or behave like a victim? And if Heather didn't turn up on time and I felt she was offending me, maybe she just left it out. Did I play the victim in that moment? Yes, well then change that and apologize for being a victim. So the Trauma Recovery Anonymous program, the plan for living is we're never victims again. No matter how bad it gets, no matter how wrong we are wronged, we choose not to be anyone's victim.
That's amazing.
We can't go into the past looking for a reason to be a victim, or in the future for being, or even in the present, we can't find a reason that, oh, Heather didn't turn up for the podcast this morning, so I'm a victim kind of stuff. We have to not be a victim in any circumstance. And that's the first step of the trauma. The second step is to understand that God planted higher powers on this earth all around us. So Heather's podcast is a higher power. This conversation might be a higher power. There's your library. You can go to your library and it's free. You can get anything you want, books, videos, audios to listen to. YouTube and Spotify are great for it. Again, you can speak to somebody. I remember there was a time when I'm in Thailand and my son is born, but I have to go back to Ireland for business. And I have to leave. He's only about a week old. And I have to go back to Ireland very abruptly to do some business. And I'm going, I don't want to leave my newborn son. And I remember being at the airport and I'm going crazy. And I see this Asian man, let me be Japanese or Korean. And I go over and I say to him, so I don't know if you speak English, but I'm going crazy. And I just speak to somebody for 10 minutes just to get it out of my head. And he's like looking at me kind of, he maybe said yes or something. So I spew at this guy for 10 minutes, all of my madness, like this stranger who probably doesn't understand English. Maybe he's fluent, I don't know. But I talk at this guy for 10 minutes and I feel as though I've let it all go. I get up and I walk away and I feel fantastic. And of course, I'm praying he doesn't speak English. He's hasn't understood a word of it and hasn't taken on any of my baggage. But I feel better for that release.
Yeah.
You know? And so that's the idea. You're never truly alone. I talk to my dog. My poor dog gets it. I'm crazy during the day. I talk at him, and he's just doing his pees and poos and sniffing bushes, whatever, and oblivious to me. But I feel as though I've been heard. And that's the same thing with God. I'm not a member of church, but I will talk to God. I will say to him, okay, this is my day. I'm meeting Heather today. Please help me be sane when I'm with Heather, when I'm with my wife or with my children. When I'm driving the car, don't let me go into a road rage. Just simple, asked for him to do. And suddenly I find I'm not in a road rage. I'm driving peacefully. I'm speaking clearly and coherently with Heather and being kind to my wife. When I ask God to go before me, something happens and I'm a healthier person. So that's the 12th step program. Then goes on about yes and no. Did you talk to God today? Is the third step. And 49 is, did you clean your side of the street? Again, about the victim mode. And then 10, 11, 12. 10 is the personal inventory you take every day, every morning. You say, was I a victim yesterday? Yes or no? No. Well done. Fantastic. Yes. Okay. You have to make amends for that. 11th step is prayer and meditation. So I never understood that meditation is simply like worry. We're experts at worry and anxiety and depression. That's meditating. We're meditating on anxiety. We're meditating on depression. Focus on something. So the idea is you pick a prayer from the Bible. So a great one is, I can achieve all things through Christ who strengthens me. So you make a list of what the all things represent. So all things for me is appearing on Heather's show and appearing confident, comfortable, hope-filling, and speaking slowly. And then spending time with my wife and my children and getting my jobs done and doing the chores around the house. And I make this list, and that's my list. And I say, okay, these are my all things. And then I sit still and I repeat myself, I am achieving all these things through Christ who strengthens me. And that's my meditation for 5 or 10 minutes. I focus on something that's good and healthy. And it fills me with a sense of peace. It's that simple. And then step 12 is coming onto a podcast and talking about this and carrying the message to others. And that's the 12-step program. The healing event is different. I came to understand that the past is not mine. None of the past is mine. Turning up for your podcast interview yesterday and you're not there, I can't go back and unchange that. That's a silly thing I did. But I can't change that past event. I'm here in the present moment. This is where my life is. So again, I look at those two biographies. I see myself, a 65-year-old man, and I see a 12-year-old child. And so I understand what happened to that 12-year-old child didn't happen to me. But I can't just bury my head in the sand and pretend it didn't happen. I have to find some way of giving the details and the baggage and the loss of innocence of that back to that 12-year-old child. So I developed a healing event. Now, there's a chap by the name of Roger Callahan. Most people haven't heard of this guy. He was a psychologist and a medical doctor back in the 60s. And he was a bit shocked by how we were becoming dependent on medication. And we weren't helping anybody. We were just suppressing their emotions. So he came up with this thing called thought field therapy. You ever heard of that?
No, huh?
It's the foundation for EFT and tapping and all these different solutions.
Oh, okay.
And he designed this 4-step tapping sequence, which takes them more than about 2.5 minutes, to alleviate trauma. So you'd go along and you say, I have terrible trauma and PTSD or whatever. And you say, okay. And he gets you to tap on these 4 points of the body. He gets you to hum a tune, count it to 1 to 9, clockwise and anti-clockwise, up and down. And then you look at your score and you before your score is a 9, and then you think about the trauma and it's a 6, and you do it again, it's a 4, and down to a 3, and suddenly the trauma doesn't affect you. And it was a breakthrough that caused EFT and tapping and all these other solutions, which are wonderful. And acupressure is another one based on acupuncture, where you put pressure on these points in your body that have all these energy points, and Reiki and all these physical practices were born, I think, out of Roger Callahan's work. But to be honest, phenomenal stuff he did. So I found his book was fantastic, and all the EFT books and the tapping solutions, that the energy is in our body. And unless we remove the energy from our body, we're going to keep suffering the manifestations of this energy. But we're carrying this dark energy from our past that's eating away at us. And until we move that energy, we need to put it somewhere. We can't just pretend it's not there. We know that doesn't work. You can easily see why. We have to actually feel as though we're physically taking this energy and giving it somewhere. And now if you haven't got God in your life, maybe you can't give it to God. So I created this healing event where I meet my younger self. So I go through this whole thing of removing all the energy from my body. I tap on the hand and the head and the torso and the chest, and I get all this energy like into a mass in front of me in my hands. And then I basically visualize seeing my younger self up in the clouds looking down at me saying, Richard, you finally see me. Will you let me go? I want to cross over into the light, but I can't go until I have all my baggage. Please give me back all my crap. And I see myself in a visualization giving all this crap back to him and him taking it. When he steps into the light, the release in my body mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually is the most beautiful experience you can ever have. And it takes 2 hours. So if you've been in therapy for 10, 20, 30, 40 years thinking your life is over, you can do this practice in 2 hours. And I promise you, word of God, the trauma will have left you. You feel the release. If someone were to ask you, how does that make you feel? You kind of go, I know it's gone. I felt for my younger self, but it's gone. It's left this psyche. He's taken all of it with him. I gave it all freely. He's taken it all. He stepped into the light. He's left this plane of existence. He's now in the mansion prepared for us in our Father's mansion. And all of that baggage is gone. And now I want to focus on living in the present. And it sounds crazy, but it's that simple.
It really is.
So it took 2 hours to do this process. At the end of 2 hours, the release, I felt this weight off my shoulders, like the weight of the world taken off my shoulders. I felt this weight off my chest, like I could finally breathe. And the anxiety was gone from my chest. I looked about 20 years younger, which I'm really glad for that part of it. All that stress, the lines went from my face. It took 2 hours to do this healing event. Very, very simple. At the end of it, you experience a freedom that you can't put into words, but you feel it in your body. Like just like someone just took something off you and went away. A burden, lifted your burden and took it from you. And that moment, you believe in miracles. I certainly did. I went from, I'm 65 years, at the time I'm 52 years of age. I've tried to commit suicide 4 times. I've suffered with depression. I've been in therapy. I'm an alcoholic, compulsive gambler, sex, self-harm, all this stuff. I got having food, overeating, binge, all that kind of stuff. And suddenly here I am doing 2-hour holistic practice, and I'm at peace.
Amazing. Awesome. So if someone is interested, if what they heard today resonates with them and they're interested in your program and recovery and everything, how can they find you?
Well, my son is my IT guru, but he has his own life. So he's been designing my website for the last 3 months. I don't know if it'll ever get finished. I have a podcast. It's called Trauma Recovery Anonymous. All my details are on that for now. When my website's up, I will add that to my podcast. I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn, Tierney Therapy, Trauma Recovery Anonymous, and EFT House. That's where I evolved. When I did EFT for a long time, my page was EFT House. And then when I learned about the whole healing event, I went to Trauma Recovery Anonymous. And Trauma Recovery Anonymous is the 14 to 12-step program in the world. It's a really big thing. I love this. There's only 14 12-step programs in the world. AA have only approved of 13 others, bar itself. Many people have tried to create 12-step programs, 10-step programs, 6-step programs. But it's been very hard for many people. So I created this 12-step program. I contacted AA to see if they would approve. And I was told it would take about 3 months. And 3 days later, I get this call from New York to say they approve of this program. So this is a recognized 12-step program. Wow. Along with NA and AA and GA and OA and all the AA programs. This is a recognized program worldwide, which is really, really beautiful.
Yeah.
If this is the only thing I give back to life, it'd be wonderful. I love the concept of Heather. You and I have this conversation today. If our conversation reaches one person, and that person gets into recovery and breaks free of the past and starts their life over. And maybe in 4 or 5 generations, one of the descendants is going to create a cure for cancer or AIDS. No one will know the part you and I played in this.
Right.
But our conversation today touched a soul. And God will know that's all that matters. Really, in the end of the days, us getting the accolades for it or fame doesn't matter a shite. But if we save one soul and that goes on to create a cure for cancer or AIDS for mankind, God will know we've done our part. And whether you're a Christian or not, you've played your part. The fact that I don't go to church and not a member of a denomination, I played my part, you know? And that's all we can do. We are helpers today. We went from victim to survivor, and now we're helpers. And we do our little bit with our podcast. And whether we have an audience of 1 or 1 million, we're trying to carry a message to save one soul. So Trauma Recovery Anonymous, the podcast, Trauma Recovery Anonymous and EFT House and Tierney Therapy on Facebook. I'm also on LinkedIn under EFT House and my own name, Richard Tierney. I try to separate work from play. My wife's asked me to do the same thing. So all the groups I was connected to under Richard Tierney, I have removed myself from that. So I keep it firmly to the tree. If you contact me, my books are available on Amazon. The Healing Event is available only on Amazon. It's a 2-hour process. It sells for about $30. And then the 12-step program sells for about $15. I think it's $12. And so you need to have both these books. So I'm not here to fix or save you. This is not general therapy. I'm not going to be a therapist for the rest of your life. You come to see me, I take you through the Healing Event, and then you're on your own, because now with the trauma gone, you don't need a therapist. Now you're going to live your life. So you may need a therapist or a life coach to get yourself back on track today. But once you've done that, you get to be a normal, boring human being. And so you have to buy the books and you have to read the books. And then you contact me and I will take you through this Healing Event. It only takes 2 hours. When the Healing Event's over, I will then take you to the 12 steps in 1 hour. And then I do a thing afterwards where I take you to the 12 steps over 12 days, free of charge, 12 steps each day. We just go through so I really cemented into your life that this is the way you're going to live the rest of your days.
Wow. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. It was great to speak with you, and I'm glad that you made it to the right time this time. But yes,
old age.
It's been a crazy week. And like I said, time zones are a thing, and different countries, no less. So I get it. But I'm glad we got to have this conversation, and thank you so much for being here. And I'll make sure that all your links and everything get put in the description so people will be able to find your podcast and stuff. So thank you so much.
Heather, thank you very much for having me on your show. I love your name, Divine Ascension. I think it's really powerful. It's a lovely kind of soft way of telling people that we are spirit in a physical form. And, you know, if we can heal the spirit, it's beautiful. So I love the name for your group. Thank you for having me on your show. To the audience, I hope I haven't offended anybody. This is the truth. This truth will set you free. If you can separate the person you are today from all the other younger aspects of you and let them go with their baggage and leave them leave this plane of existence, you can be free to have a life beyond your wildest dreams. Heather, thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much. If you're ready to stop surviving the ascension and start actually moving through it with a map, the Self-Spirit method was built for exactly where you are. And if you want a little taste of what that might look like, my book, Becoming Divine, is now available. It's the foundation, the framework, and the permission slip all in one place. Find the program and the link to purchase the book at divineascensionco.com. You were never meant to figure this out alone. I'm here. Let's do this together.